Hi, and thanks for spending some time with us here at Visual Art Photography. I'm Ray Scott. Today, we're going to be looking at symmetry. Now, I have to be honest with you, symmetry is not something that I just go out and look for. I don't say to myself, hey Ray, let's go outside and shoot some symmetry. It doesn't work that way. But what I do with symmetry is I use it as a compositional tool. I use it as a photographic tool that I put in my photographic toolbox, which resides, like you, in my brain. And the way I look at it is the more tools that you have in your photographic toolbox, the more possibilities that you have, especially if you know how to use them. So, symmetry is something that I think is important because when you go out there, if you have it in that photographic toolbox of yours, then you'll recognize it. And if you use it, hey, you can take some really interesting and some impactful photos. Now, symmetry, as defined, is balanced proportions, a correspondence in size, shape, and relative position of parts on opposite sides of a dividing line. Now, in nature, symmetry sometimes is hard to find. It's hard to see it. And for our purposes today, I'm talking about symmetry, but also the suggestion of symmetry, which means it doesn't have to be exact. Now, if you're downtown, say, and you're shooting buildings, a lot of them are very symmetrical. So it's easy to find symmetry, and it can be really lots of fun. But in nature, well, you have to look a little closer, but it's there often. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to take a look at symmetry. I'm going to show you some examples, and we're going to go through them and see how we can use symmetry to make our photos even better. As usual, comments and questions can be addressed down below. It's symmetry today. Let's take a look at it.
So we start off in nature, and we see here that we have some what I call suggestive symmetry. It's not by any means perfect. I mean, the sky is blue, and up at the top of the frame, there is no sky. But you get the idea as the trees come into the water, and you see the line where the dividing line, right there, where you have two different planes that are very similar. Suggestive symmetry. The next one, we've seen this a lot. Reflections in the autumn, and you have your dividing line there. Okay, so this is suggestive symmetry. It's not perfect. The water is moving a little bit, so it's not as clear as I would have liked it to have been. So the trees are not quite as clear as obviously they are above the water. This is a little bit more like it in terms of symmetry. This is very close. When you see the dividing line, you can see that what's above and what's below is very, very similar. Symmetry. Here, again, this is where that having this in your photographic toolbox comes to mind, because you're walking by this situation in this canal, and it's the evening. The sky is starting to be beautiful too, but look at that. And you see you have your dividing line, which is not straight, by the way. It's kind of curved, all right? But if your mind is thinking about the possibilities of symmetry, if it's in your subconscious there somewhere, if it's in that toolbox of yours, you'll look at this and you will recognize it when you see it. And you may be able to work with it and come up with something that's kind of interesting. Same here. And water is a great way to have your symmetry, right? Even if it's just a puddle of water downtown or something like that, because water does that great divide. Symmetry. Again here, reflections, they work so well to make symmetrical photos. There's your dividing line. Here, now this is symmetry. It's not quite, but it's almost perfect on both sides. And it's man-made. I mean, you know, architecturally, geometrically, it's very, very symmetrical. Whoever put this together wanted it to be exactly like this. So you're walking by and you notice it and you take the picture. There's your dividing line. It's really, really close on both sides. I mean, there are some differences, but it's symmetrical for sure. Here, symmetry. A lot easier to find, obviously, with man-made objects. A lot of things downtown in your downtown core may be asymmetrical by design. Now, lots of buildings are not. They're all kind of crazy angles and things like that. But this one works really, really well. And you'll notice even, and this is important too, the sky. There are no clouds. All right, this is just a black and white image, no clouds, so that you don't have more, clouds on one side and nothing on the other. It's not. Again, you see in the bottom left-hand corner there, you see a reflection in the glass, and you don't see that on the right-hand side. So, again, not perfectly symmetrical, but I mean, the building itself, yeah. I mean, you've got it. There's your dividing line right there. Again here, the suggestion of it with your dividing line right there. Symmetry again, some silos in the country. You're walking by, you look up, and you see not only the two silos, which make it very symmetrical, but you see the ladders going up the silos. And there's your dividing line there. Symmetry. It's a nice thing to be aware of. Even power lines. I mean, look at that, power lines. Symmetry. Dividing line, you got it, right down the middle. Doesn't hurt to have that nice sun and halo there either, does it? Now here it's a little bit more difficult because it really isn't symmetrical. But in my mind, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, something, it is kind of, because you see the shadows that are very similar. They're not the same, but they're very similar coming out both sides of the tree in the foreground. So there is some semblance of symmetry to this photo, at least the way I see it. Not perfectly symmetrical by any stretch of the imagination, of course, but there is a hint of it, and you can see it right there if you look. A very old car. My neighbor has a friend who has an old car. My neighbor has an old car too, but look at that. Right down the middle. Here in beautiful St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador, on the street corner. Now, this is not symmetrical, but you know what I mean when I say it's suggestive. The suggestion of symmetry is right there. Okay, it's not symmetrical, but if you split it in half and you look down the right side and then you look down the left side, boy, there are some distinct similarities there, and the suggestion of symmetry is there for sure. Even if you're up close with an orchid here, a macro shot of an orchid, which looks like some kind of a bird of prey coming down at you, but that's another story for another day. But look at how almost perfect it is on both sides. And if you divide it down, you see what I mean. Symmetry in nature. You can say the same thing about a human face too. Although both sides of a human face, either side is not exactly the same. Eyes are different, ears are different, all sorts of things. But the suggestion of absolute symmetry is there. Okay, a typewriter up close. A very old typewriter up close. While the numbers are 5, 6, and 7, and 8, and you divide it down, and they're different, and the keys are a little bit different, but it is symmetrical. It's everywhere. Even these spoons, macro spoons from a previous tutorial of mine. And this is something that I set up. So this is just me setting it up. But look how symmetrical the whole thing is. And there's your dividing line, of course. That's just me setting up spoons. Being aware of symmetry. Yeah, beautiful. Spain. And this building has the symmetry right there. And finally, back to the power lines again. A little bit more difficult to get your eye on this one, I suppose, but it is quite similar on both sides for some suggestive symmetry.
So you can find symmetry in lots of different places. It's just a matter of being able to recognize it and then use it in your photography. Until next time, I'm Ray Scott, reminding you, it's not what you see, it's how you see it. And I'll see you soon.